All right, everyone. So let's do this here. Let's talk about digital research project. So this has had a couple different orientations and versions before this. Hopefully, this will be somewhat interesting, and it'll be something that you can work with and have a good time with this week, but not, not actually be too overwhelmed with. It is important to satisfy or develop. Well, actually, I did not list the specific learning outcome on here. I think this is 3, 4. But it also is important to help you develop and perhaps even find or discover your capacities to put forward stories and communicate in a digital medium in perhaps a more sophisticated way than you might otherwise have known how to do before. So let's take a look at this. So the prompt here is for you to explore some connections between Europe and the wider world in the Middle Ages. What do we mean by Europe? Well, I mean, Europe's kind of a fuzzy construct. I mean, it's a geographic location above all, and above all else, that's how it's understood. That's how words like Germany or Italy are understood. They are not political units. They do not denote a society or a civilization. They are the lands where you will tend to find people who might describe themselves in one sense or another as uh, Germans in terms of language, but they don't. Their actual identity is nested in either sort of regnal, kingdom level, or empire level identities, or they're sort of intensely sort of more local and intermediate level ethnic identities. You're Bavarian, you're Schwabian, you're Saxon. Um, in Italy, of course, you're Milanese. It's also that's centered around your city. You're Milanese. You're from Bergamo. You're from Pavia. You're from Venezia. Uh, you're from Firenze, from Florence. So when we say Europe, we mean generally sort of the geographic term. The course as a whole is focused on Central and Western Europe, with Eastern Europe, Central Asia, Western Asia, North and West Africa as also parts of the course. We want to talk about the connections between and among these things. So the medieval world was not closed off. It was not some sort of isolated place where people didn't travel or interact or know about other peoples and other lands, or were not influenced or integrated into those areas. And that's what I want you to explore here. Okay. So the sort of pedagogy, sort of learning philosophy here is nested in this book, Idea-Based Learning, which I should actually put in italics. That would be good. Multiple points of view, understanding, and hopefully from that sort of higher order wisdom comes from understanding multiple points of view. That's something that's sort of been nested in sort of higher education for some time. In some ways, it goes back to sort of, well, ultimately to various Jewish ideas that you can find in various texts regarding multiplicity of viewpoints, and that kind of gets carried forward into aspects of sort of medieval Christian civilization. And these days, it's sort of put forward as, you need different viewpoints. You need to have multiple testimonies, multiple perspectives. A single viewpoint is not going to help you arrive at truth or understanding. In terms of trying to establish observable or historically observable phenomena. So multiple viewpoints, because what we're doing, remember, especially with history is mostly triangulation. That's mostly what it is. So this helps you triangulate a bit more how medieval European peoples, however you define that, saw themselves related to their world. Okay. You have 3 different programs here. I prefer StoryMap ArcGIS. There's also NightLab StoryMap, which is out of Northwestern University, and they also have a timeline function. These are, I don't know, maybe marginally easier to use. I don't think so though, and the end product is not nearly as nice as StoryMaps, which that's Esri. That's a major multi-billion-dollar corporation. Their platform sometimes is not as stable as you might expect from a multi-billion-dollar corporation, but we'll get into that. So let's take a brief look at what these are here. So you'll go to StoryMaps ArcGIS. You will sign up for a free account if you want to use this. Do not pay for it. If there's something that says you have to pay for it, then you need to rethink what it is you're about to click on, because you should not have to pay for anything. Okay. All right, and it will take you to new story. Okay, so what are you going to do? When you get signed up, you're going to click on new story. Just want to make sure here that we are sharing the right screen. Okay, good. You're going to click on new story. You can do start from scratch, build your story 1 block at a time. You can start with a couple different options. Guided map tour, walk your audience through a list of locations. Explore map tour, curated set of places in whatever order they choose. How you do this is up to you. I have mostly done the sidecar. And what you'll see, let me click on this one here with from Indigenous America, is you'll see a title slide, and you can begin to add titles to it and pages and blocks. It's kind of like you can use Sway, Microsoft Sway, in it comes with your Office suite in the RBC email. And somewhat like not exactly like NightLab StoryMap, but let's just take a look at this. This is one I actually managed to put together for my American history course. So it'll have your name, it'll have the date, and it'll have the title. Okay, and now the background image. If I want to edit it, I will click Edit Story. We'll get into images in a moment. You'll notice here this little eye over here. Iroquois Village, 1561, from Nicolas Jans Vischer via mystudios.com/art gallery. So this is probably the most important thing, right? Because you're going to have your commentary, but images, embedded videos, maps, and so on are going to be key to this kind of presentation. You do have a responsibility to put in a caption or a link to the image. And let's get into that. So if I was going to edit this, let's click Edit. And it's launching the story builder. So you'll see here. Okay. Let's go down here to the first one. And essentially, this is all that I have done. Each one of these, essentially, you have a block here, and then you can put different, this stays the same on the right, and you can just cycle through all the different, well, actually, no, not necessarily. It changes block to block. And then you can put different tiles in on the left. And I actually have not experimented with this feature, but you can switch the panels too, which I haven't done. Let's take a look at this. This is the Hopewell interaction sphere. This is kind of the sort of medieval North American peoples. And let's go here, options. What does it bring you up here? You have the attribution. That's where you would put in the actual web address of the image. Notice it's the image. That's .jpg, so .jpeg. So the actual address of the web page where the image is, that's, you could do that too, as long as it takes you to the place where the image is. But the image itself always has a separate web address. You have options here, fill and crop, do not crop, properties, alternative text. I did not actually do that here. And of course, this would be the, in terms of display, that's the attribution. So that's where you're going to get that little I, and you're going to, it'll pop up and show the caption and the web address. And of course, other options, you can replace it or delete it. Okay. This is probably the most important thing. If you're going to put an image over here in the sidebar column, same sort of thing. Image options, Mound City, Chillicothe, Ohio. There's not much else you're going to do with this. Where's this from? Just search Mound City, Chillicothe, Ohio. It will pop up. So in that case, do you have to put, you know, the web link and all that? Well, not exactly. The alternative, first of all, it displays down here, so that would kind of mess it up. You could notice as soon as I highlight it, I could put in a link. In fact, I probably should do that. I should probably put in the link to the, should probably go back and put in the link to where I got the image from. That's good. That's good scholarly practice, and we always try to model that. Though actually, it's good that I didn't, because now it's a teaching point. So you can make it bold-faced, you can put it in italics, you can put in the web link, or you can change the color of the text. Now here, of course, is the analysis, right? Along with, you know, you make it some parts bold-faced so people can navigate it more easily. Web links to different resources. These are in essence your citations, all right? So that's sometimes on web, sort of long form web based work, you will have footnotes. That's a complicated kind of HTML markup, which you don't need to do or know. The quick version of this is rather, sorry, where was I? So putting in these sort of links. So for example, to go back to the assignment, if you were going to use this site, People of Color in European Art History, let's put this in here, which as far as I know, it should still be available. Be weird if it was down. That's interesting. Okay, if that doesn't work, then that's interesting, because I had no idea that was not. Let's do England's immigrants instead. Oh, wait a minute, there it is. We're gonna have to look at this anyway. Okay, so let's say I wanted you, and I said specifically I want you to look at the 12 and 1300s. Let's go to the 1200s here. If you were going to use see, we're going slow this morning. Okay. All right. Let's say if you were going to use something from England's immigrants and you wanted to put this data visualization in, results by origin. Right. So what this is showing is that from 1330 to 1550, this database has over 13,000 individual cases of people immigrating to England, medieval England, whether it's temporary or full-time. Actually, what they found, unfortunately, the late Mark Ormrod and his team found was an awful lot of people were moving. There's were moving to England to learn English. They would take jobs as, this is got a little dicier after 1337, but in between and with all the truces and so on, it's around 1330. You go to England, you get a job as a as a housekeeper, servant, or just menial labor job. The point being to improve your English, to learn English. So let's say you wanted to show this chart. You could take a screenshot, right? Which would be print screen, the print screen key on your keyboard. If you have OneDrive set up, it will automatically save to OneDrive as a screenshot. If you don't, then you want to open, well, the latest programs don't come with Paint. The screenshot should be saved somewhere. If it's not in OneDrive, you should, if OneDrive is up, and I highly recommend this, then it will automatically save. You go to screenshots and then you open it up and you can edit it. You take that screenshot, you put it maybe as your big picture because you want to talk about this in your sidebar. You have to put the caption and the link in. In this case, you can put the link into the web page because this itself is an interactive chart. So you put the link into the web page, people can go back and see it, and then you can have your discussion. You can have your discussion about immigration in England, right? All right, so now the next one to think about is embedding videos. Let's say I wanted to create a new one, and actually we're going to move this all the way down here. There we go. So add media. Notice this. Add image or video. You can drag and drop a file or paste a link and it will insert it. So when we get to this is the highlights from Cahokia, which was sort of the largest medieval mound cities, sort of high Middle Ages, around 1200. Artist conception, you can find that pretty easily online. Though again, like I said, I should provide a web link to that. Citations, indicating where you're getting your information from. And now you have a video embedded, right? Now, notice, and this is where I think I'm going to have to stop here for now. Where you're getting your data from, I want you to look at a couple of these points, right? So some of these you may have to do a screenshot, edit, do a little editing, to trim off the sort of all the tabs and the scrub bar at the bottom of the screen, and then post that as your image to then have your discussion about it. You'll notice the text doesn't have to be too extensive. You're not overwhelming people with words, but you're communicating in terms of digital format what you could not get across simply by using words, right? And that's what makes the digital format so powerful. It's a different way to communicate. Essentially, if I can get the same thing across without the digital format, I don't really need the digital format. Now, proving that that's necessary or not necessary can be a bit of a subjective enterprise, but that's a good rule of thumb. If it's just something you could write, you probably don't need the digital. But I want you to think about these things in space and time and visually. Hereford map of the world, you may wind up doing a screenshot of that. Always remember the citation, the web link. Marco Polo's travels, you may want to do that, Travels of Ibn Battuta, and so on. The main primary source example that you're going to want here is Black Central Europe, which is really fantastic. This has come on a lot. A friend of mine and some of her cohorts in modern German history started putting this together, and that was they started this when, well, I guess we were wrapping up grad school at the time. This has really come on since this began. So, I mean, this did not exist. There was a page with some stuff in it, but this is much better now than it was, and it keeps improving. Culture, politics, some documents, a lot with Frederick II. So we're smacking that 1200s era, which is good. You'll notice the word more quite a bit. This is kind of this is something that comes out of sort of late medieval, early modern England in particular, but coming out of sort of the Latin, and it has a rather imprecise thing. It can mean Muslim, it can mean African, it can mean both. It's often used as a commonplace description as well as a racial and religious slur. It has a wide variety of registers. Saint Maurice, the Black Magus, that's the one of the three kings in the adoration of the Magi, and travel and contact. So good mix of text and image here. So I recommend in the project using these two, using this. And this is really all I want you to do. Explore these different databases, take some screenshots to illustrate your points, edit them, cite them properly, and write impressions and your analysis of how you see medieval Europe, its connections to the wider world, and use the sources in Black Central Europe as part of that. And then what you'll want is you'll want to have a sort of concluding panel. You can put in a general image and have a concluding panel, put conclusion at the top. You know, you can put these headings in your sidebar here, and just summarize what you think. Now, the key thing here is how you share this at the end of the day. All right, I don't really want to. All right, fine, I'll republish it. Doesn't matter. Checking the story for issues, publishing your story. I'm gonna have to go back and delete some of this stuff anyway, but that's fine. How do you share it? This is absolutely essential. This you use the buttons up here. You can share it on Facebook. I mean, it's your story, it's your project. You have created it. You don't. It's not just for this class. You can share it, you know, on Facebook, Twitter, however you want. The last thing here is copy the story URL. That's what you're going to submit on Canvas, just that URL. If you go up to the address bar up top and share that, I can't access it because that's your personal account editable link. I don't have access to that. So you have to go down here to the share buttons to copy story URL. Okay. All right. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on NightLab particularly. If you do ArcGIS StoryMaps ArcGIS, that's going to be much better. I mean, NightLab is moderately easier to use, I suppose, but it doesn't really look, at least what I've done, what I've worked with, it doesn't work quite as, doesn't look quite as good. Timeline, I wouldn't really recommend that either, because it doesn't give you as much of an ability to do good, nice, interactive, or aesthetically pleasing work. Right. So this is mostly what you're going to do with the NightLab story map. You can have a side panel, an introductory panel, and then it'll zoom you in. You can use different maps as backgrounds. It'll take you to the next one, to Utica, and it looks like we're going backwards here. Yeah, looks like we're going backwards in time. So there are some applicabilities here with NightLab, but I don't, I'm also running out of time to do this. So I would mostly experiment with StoryMap ArcGIS. If you do wind up using Nightlab, it's a fairly simple thing to do. You start adding points on the map. You can choose different backgrounds and types of maps. You can insert images. It's kind of a linked story process. Perhaps somewhat trickier to do in terms of getting something that looks more or less like the StoryMap ArcGIS version. But, you know, this is the Newberry Library, which is one of the most famous research libraries in the United States. Works perfectly well for what they need. The most important thing is citation and also understanding how to use images, especially that print screen key to get, especially on interactive pages where you want to focus on that page to get that screenshot that then you can use with proper attribution citation. Okay. All right. So that is all we're going to do. And hopefully this helps.